Gencon 2022 is coming up next week, so let's talk about what we might expect from Wyrd. What's up everybody, Jeff here, and in case you don't already know, Gencon is a huge gaming convention that takes place in the United States. It's also where Wyrd likes to make a lot of their announcements of their upcoming products for the next year. So I thought this would be a great time to go over all of the announced but unreleased products that we know about so far. After that, I'll also do some speculating about what I think could be coming up. So after you watch the video, definitely drop a comment or hop in the Discord and let me know what you thought of my predictions and maybe make some predictions of your own. While you're here, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all the people who do that consistently. It really helps out a lot. And one last quick note, while I was making this video, Wyrd actually announced the whole Witness crew that's going to be available at Gen Con. That's pretty exciting because a lot of those characters come from first edition. So keep an eye out because you know a video's coming to explain all their lore. If you're excited about that video, leave a comment or let me know in the Discord because all your excitement is really what keeps me going doing this. And with all that said, let's get into the new stuff. To start off, let's talk about Through the Breach. For those of you that don't know, this is the tabletop RPG that Wyrd makes that's set in the universe of Malapho. Now, it's already been announced that the next supplement for the RPG is going to be based on the 10 Thunders. There's already supplements out for many of the other factions, and if this book follows in their footsteps, we're going to get a lot of new, interesting content out of this. Every other supplement starts out with extensive information about the background and organization of the faction in question, so we can expect to find more information about the Katanaga crime family that became the 10 Thunders, as well as more about how they're organized, probably Earthside and in Malapho. That's usually followed by some information about notable figures within the organization, so maybe we'll meet some new characters that we haven't interacted with in the game before. And last, as far as the lore, the RPG books will often go into detail about significant locations in Malapho that are related to the faction, so we can expect to learn a lot more about the Little Kingdom, the Town of Promise, and anywhere else that might have a significant 10 Thunders presence. Next, there's usually game mechanics, so we can expect new pursuits, new magical abilities, items, weapons, the whole 9 yards. And all of it will be 10 Thunders themes. And then at the end, we always get the bestiary, which should be the most interesting to those of you who don't play the RPG. The reason I say that is that famously, Through the Breach is where many of the models that eventually come to Malifaux get their start. A lot of times the artwork and sometimes even the name and basic mechanics of models will show up in an RPG supplement, and then a year or two later, they'll arrive in the skirmish game. So when we get this new book, we might get a handful of hints about some of the models that might be coming to the 10 Thunders later. Next up, we have The Other Side. Once again, for the uninitiated, The Other Side is another miniatures game set in the Malapho universe, but this one is at something like a company scale as opposed to the small skirmishes we see in Malapho. The game began when it was kickstarted a few years back, and you might remember last year when Wyrd put out the 2-player starter set with the Guild and the Court of Two. There's a bunch of unreleased stuff that Wyrd has already talked about in various settings over the course of the last few years. So if you don't know, The Other Side has 4 main factions: the King's Empire, Abyssinia, the Cult of the Burning Man, and the Gibbering Hordes. And it also has 2 syndicates, which are kind of like mini factions that you can pair with the main factions. And those are the Guild and the Court of Two. Now for the 4 main factions, there isn't really anything unreleased that's been announced so far, with one exception. Wyrd did a worldwide event called the Obsidian Gate, where players played games of Through the Breach, using pre-generated characters from each of the factions. At the end of the campaign, the most popular faction was meant to have their character turned into an adjunct for Through the Breach. Dr. John Watson from the King's Empire was the winner, but so far we haven't seen him come to the game. The last we heard about him was in 2019, when Wyrd confirmed that he was still coming, but no word yet on if that's still the case. The syndicates are pretty new to the game, and as of right now, there's 1 other unit for each faction that's already been announced. And in addition, we know that those models will be cross-compatible with Malapho. So first, we have the Yaksha for the Court of Two, and they'll also be available as versatile models in the Explorer Society or in Jed's Seeker keyword. And next up, we have the Hexbows for the Guild in The Other Side and the Guild in Malapho. They're going to be part of Sonia's keyword and also the keyword Cavalier. Let's put a pin in that one for now. Now, these are the only units that are currently announced for the existing factions, but hopefully we'll see some more units coming out for the 4 main factions, and maybe even some extras for the Guild and Court of Two. In addition to all that, we also know the next 2 factions that are coming to the game, the Kimon and the 3 Kingdoms. These were actually announced in the original rulebook on the last 2 pages with these teaser images, and since then we've gotten a little bit more information about what to expect. First off, the 3 Kingdoms are the name adopted by the nation resulting from the unification of China, Japan, and Vietnam. In the lore, they've been occupied by the Guild and have been fighting for their independence. The Kimon are demons that live in another realm and intend to invade Earth. You might recognize some of them from Asami and her crew, as we're expecting the Kimon faction to be comprised of Oni and other creatures from various Asian mythologies. So what we know so far, and please excuse my pronunciation, to start we have Takayasha, who is a commander for the Kimon, Tatarigami, who's going to be their Titan, the Possessed, which is a unit for the faction, and we also have Zheng Kuai, who's going to be the commander in the Allegiance box for the Kimon. We've also seen the Quillen confirmed, but no card yet, so we don't know what role they'll play. We also know there's something called a Kimon Brute coming to the faction, but so far no art or rules associated with them. And the Kimono are also going to be getting this monster known as the Gyuki, some sort of cow spider thing. I don't know, but I like it. I'm also fairly confident that we've seen these guys, called the Yamabiko, confirmed to be coming to the Kimono, but I scoured the internet and couldn't find any evidence of this, so you'll just have to take my word for it for now. Or don't, whichever. Now, we know a lot less about the Three Kingdoms, but last year at Gencon, they did announce a few things that we'll be seeing for the faction. Their allegiance box is going to be led by Ma Jingwen, who's a commander for the Three Kingdoms. And we also have dragon monks coming in alongside him. Now, I'm fairly certain that we've seen at least a little bit more art for Three Kingdoms models that are coming to the game, but once again, Waldo seems to have snuck in and scrubbed them from the internet, so we'll have to wait and see. And that's everything that I could find that's coming to the other side. And last, but certainly not least, Malifaux. So to start, we know that Wyrd intends to make a starter box for all the 8 factions. So while we don't have any of the details, we know that there's going to be starter boxes coming down the pipe for the 10 Thunders, Resurrectionists, Arcanists, and the Guild. We also know that with the exception of the Outcast starter, each of the starter boxes has introduced a new keyword that's not associated with a master. So if they keep up that trend, we might see some interesting new stuff coming. In addition to that, we have 4 new models coming to the Bayou Bash board game. And while they haven't officially said that they're putting out 3D models for them, they did show early versions of them in their display case at a convention a while back. So I think it's safe to assume that the other 4 models will be coming to the last 4 masters for the Bayou. I'm thinking Whiskey Gaming for Brewmaster, Toad Twins for Ophelia, Undead Raptor for Zip, and Giga Turtle for Sommer. So in addition to all that, over the last handful of weeks, Wyrd has been showing off some new models with some brand new keywords associated with them. This all started back in the last errata when Barbaros got the new keyword, Returned. And then more recently, we got to take a look at Gwyll, who's a Resurrectionist who also has the Return keyword. If you want to see a quick rundown of some of the lore connections behind Gwyll, then you can check out the video I did recently all about it. We also got to look at a new 10 Thunders model, Story of Ragin, who has the new keyword Story. And there was also a little bit of lore information released with this guy, so you can check out the video I did on him as well. We also got to look at a new Bayou model called a Skulker skin, and it has the keyword Angler associated with it. As I mentioned earlier in the video, we have the 2 models that are also coming to the other side, the Yaksha, who's hanging out with Jedza, and the Hexbos, who go with Sonya's keyword as well as a new keyword, Cavalier. And finally, we have the big one that was just announced in much more detail this week, which is Damian Ravencroft, and the keyword Witness. Now, we've been teased some images from this crew for a while, and recently we were shown Loth Bot. So if you want to learn a little more about Loth Bot and Witness, which is a tyrant, then you can check out the video I did on that. In addition to Loth Bot himself, this crew is also going to include Soulstone Gaiman, Legger Domain, Bellaventine Thorpe, Dabblers, who also go in Wong's keyword, and Marco Bonatti, in addition to the Totem, the puzzle box. And that wraps up everything we know for sure is coming to Malapho. So let's get into some speculation. I think we're likely to get the announcement of 2 new books. Wyrd tends to put out a new Malapho book once a year, so I think we'll get some details about that. And hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about what the hell is going on with the Malapho burn story. And I think we'll also get a book for the other side, because it's kind of long overdue. Hopefully this will advance the plot, and we'll learn about the long pending invasion of the Kimono, and how the 3 Kingdoms intend to stand against them. I think it's a fairly safe bet that when they release the Kimono and the 3 Kingdoms, they'll come in a starter box, similar to how they've done all the other main factions. So we can safely assume there'll be a commander, and probably 2 different units in each box. In addition to the other announced stuff, I think there's some chance we'll see the Suzaku also joining up with the Kimono. If you're curious, the Obsidian Gate event that I mentioned was eventually turned into a Penny Dreadful for Through the Breach, and it deals very directly with the Kimono, and even features some of the characters that are coming to the game. So that Penny Dreadful has a lot of hints of what we might expect to see. Unfortunately for the 3 Kingdoms, we haven't seen as many interesting things. Presumably we'll be getting a Titan, a couple of units, and additional characters, but we don't know enough about their military to know what else we should really be expecting, except for the Boxer. Now, if you're not familiar with the Boxer, he is one of the freedom fighters who's helping with the 3 Kingdoms uprising against the Guild. He's also secretly working for the 10 Thunders, and is Mei Fang's brother. He's shown up in the lore a handful of times. You can check out my video on Mei Fang if you want to learn more about him. But I think he's a very good candidate to be introduced into the 3 Kingdoms in the other side. Not only would it fit with the lore, but he'd be pretty cool, since he has a 10 Thunders connection, and he also fights with Metal Claws. As far as Malifaux goes, I think it's pretty likely that we're going to be getting 9th Masters for every faction. There's enough new keywords out there, and now we know for sure that we're getting a new Master for the Arcanists, so I think they're going to spread the love and keep everything balanced like they usually do. With that being said, let's look at each of the keywords we know about, and make a few predictions about where they'll go with them. We already know pretty much everything about the Witness crew, but we don't really know what the connection is yet to the Witness. So I think what we're going to find out is that Mr. Ravencroft stumbled upon the Soulstone Geode, and the Tyrant Witness was able to take him as a host, similar to the way that we see December taking Rasputina as a host, or Sharufe taking Sonya as a host. This might explain some of his abilities, and the fact that he can exert control over the game and things like that. Moving on to the story keyword, I think what we're going to find out here is that Misaki has appointed one of her agents to watch over the Library of All Things. Then this person somehow learns how to take the stories and manifest them into physical form and use them to fight. I think this is a really cool idea because I like the idea of having a master who uses ancient gods like Pokemon to fight for him. Now, we already know about Story of Raijin, so I think that any of the other Shinto gods would be fair play to join up in this crew. A really good bet would be Fujin, who's Raijin's brother, and some of the mythology deals with their relationship with each other. I think anyone else in the pantheon is likely to show up, and I'll be curious to see if they decide to reach outside the Shinto pantheon and get into other mythologies. I'll also be curious to see if these gods have anything to say about the Kamon invading Earth. I think there's a fair chance we also see Arthur van Schroeker, who was the protagonist of the story from first edition that this all came from. Next, we have the Angler keyword. Now, this model is clearly showing a connection with the Gibbering Hordes from the other side. Now, we know the Gibbering Hordes come from Malifaux, and they live deep in the ocean, which is just on the other side of the bayou. So it seems like maybe somebody from the bayou has made contact with the Gibbering Hordes, or perhaps one of the Gibbering Hordes has made their way into the bayou. Either way, I think this crew could either be gremlins who focus on fishing, particularly hunting the Gibbering Hordes, or perhaps it'll be members of the bayou who joined up with the Gibbering Hordes, though that seems unlikely since they're wearing some of their skin. Either way, we know that the tyrant Meridian, who's closely associated with the Gibbering Hordes, also had a strong connection with the sunken city in the bayou, so I'm sure that's going to tie into the story somehow, and one of these days I'm going to do a video on the tyrants, so we can talk more about that. Next, we have the return keyword, and in the video I did about this keyword, I did a lot of speculating about who this master could be and what the story could be, and I think I'm going to stick with my prediction from back then. Too long didn't read. There's an ancient Neverborn called Castor, who's basically a vampire, and I think he's going to come back and team up with Barbaros, and eventually they're going to save Lilith. But I also won't be too surprised if Wyrd just decides to introduce a brand new character, and frankly I think that would be cool too. And lastly, we have the Cavalier keyword. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's no current member of the guild in the lore who's known as a cavalry commander or anything like that. So I suspect this is going to be a brand new character. Maybe someone who came over from Earthside to try to get a handle on all the chaos that's going on with the Burning Man. But it'd be really cool to see a cavalry-focused faction. But since we didn't see the Mounted Guard get this keyword in the last errata, I think it's more likely that they're using the word in its other meaning, Cavalier as in reckless. So maybe we'll see a new guild master whose defining characteristic is that they're reckless. That seems kind of weird too. They're all pretty reckless. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on this one. I think it'll be interesting either way. So that covers a master for the Bayou, the Ten Thunders, the Guild, the Arcanists, and then maybe the Neverborn, or maybe the Resurrectionists, or possibly the Outcasts. And I'm going to assume the return keyword is for the Neverborn. So that leaves us waiting for information on masters for Resurrectionists, Outcasts, and Explorer Society. Now, I think it's fairly likely that any of these new masters could be brand new characters to the lore, but that's no fun to guess. So let's take a stab at it. For the Resurrectionists, I think they've hinted a little bit that Mortimer could try to step up and become a more powerful Resurrectionist. But I think that's lame, and I think Nicodem's going to come back one day, so I'm going to pick somebody else. There's a character named Gwennifer Howell, who was featured in a story back in 2nd edition called The Dead Man's Ball. In that story, to keep it brief, she's experimenting with necromancy, meets Nicodem, goes to a party with all the other necromancers, and gets terrorized by Seamus before she leaves. Wyrd has shown that they like pulling characters from older stories that were fan favorites and bringing them into the game, sort of like they did with English Ivan. And along those lines, I think Gwen would be a great choice. For the Explorer Society, we don't have a ton of information about the different people in the organization since it's so new to the fiction, at least in any major way. But there is one character who we haven't seen show up yet, and that's Gretchen Janus. She's actually currently the leader of the Explorer Society, and though she doesn't seem like the type to get in and get her hands dirty, it would be pretty cool to see her join the game as a new master. I think it would be a little surprising, since some of the other models who are already out would definitely have to be in her keyword, and they weren't given any new keywords, but it's a cool idea. As far as the outcasts, my wild guess is going to be Imogene Wyatt. Now, Wyatt is a doctor who used to work in the fighting pits, and was actually the one who severed the tendons in Barbaros's wings that caused him not to be able to fly. She was in a story in an early edition of Wyrd Chronicles, and she helped Bishop escape the pits. At the end of the story, she tells Bishop that he needs to kill the leader of the pits, so that everyone knows that she's in charge now. I think she'd be a great candidate to bring into the game, and if the outcasts need a new master, I can't think of anyone else who would have the power or authority to take that position. Alright, so that's everything that we know is coming for the 3 games, plus a little bit of speculation about what else we might get to see. I think some of that is some very safe predictions. I think we're definitely getting 2 new books. I think we're definitely getting 8 new masters, but some of it is a little bit more speculative. I think it's definitely hard to say who the new masters are going to be, but I took a couple shots in the dark. Let me know what you think about those. If you'd be interested in me doing a video about any of those characters, let me know that as well. And let me know who you think we're going to see. Take some guesses. I love wild speculation. It's a lot of fun. So if you have a favorite character from the lore that we've never seen pop up before, throw their name out there. maybe Wyrd will decide to choose that character and put him in the game. But that's it for me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all the YouTube things. Hop into the Discord. We have a lot of fun conversations talking about the moral virtues of Leviticus, discussing whether or not Molly is actually Resurrectionist Batman, all sorts of cool stuff. And also stay tuned because there's going to be a lot of cool videos coming up soon. I've been promising you guys a video on the Tyrants for a long time, and I've already started working on it, so never fear. So stick around because you won't want to miss it. And of course, thanks for watching. This is Dee Dee. She's a new member of the team. She's an expert microphone holder.